Hurricane Ida experience?
Before every hurricane, Terrebonne goes through a process of preparation, and it's almost down to a checklist, and anticipation. And we try to anticipate what a storm may do. Mother Nature always throws curves at you. And we have experienced after Ida, we learned a very valuable lesson after Ida. No water, but tremendous wind damage, and one of our major storm protection components, the floodgate on the Houma Navigation Canal, actually broke loose because the head differential was reversed. We expected 10 to 12 feet on the outside and 2 feet on the inside. We had actually 10 to 12 on the inside because of the wind coming out of the north. So the gate broke loose. It left its moorings. The only thing that kept it in place was the 3-inch cable that's used to close it. If not for that, we'd have found it somewhere on Timberley or something like that. So we were very fortunate. We learned a lesson from that, and we knew that we had to change the design a little bit of that floodgate to put some huge pipes beneath it with a one-way flat gate to allow, if we get that kind of water again, it can get out without causing any damage to the facility itself. But there's always something you learn from every storm, and Ida has been no different, and we're very fortunate in that there was no flooding in Terrebonne. Out inside of Morganza, we did have a lot of wind damage, but that was to be expected given the strength of the storm. So we rebuilt it.
I think one of the lessons my experience is to call, to make sure my people's off their island. But one of the big things through my life, going through Hurricane Betsy when I was 9 years old, my father, my mother, there was a cypress law by the Fouchon. And my dad had nothing on his back, and we started walking from the Fouchon Curve, the cypress law, and the National Guard was there, and they said they couldn't go across the line. My dad said, I have nothing left, because we was right there in West Wego, and we made it to the line, and we started walking, and the National Guard said you couldn't go. And my dad said, don't, if you're gonna shoot anybody, which he didn't mean it that way. He just said that, I want to get back to where I have nothing. I want to go see what I have. But the biggest thing that I make sure happens, that in my area where I represent, and born and raised, is I remember there was 8 families in one little home, and we had nothing left, 3 parlors left, and my mother lost their restaurant. And I got a picture of my dad standing, black and white picture, and me 9 years old, just looking at my dad, and says, I lose my family, I lose a life, I lost material things, we're gonna rebuild. So we got together, lived together in a house, maybe 5, 6 months, together, 8 little families, and I'll never forget that. We played outside, and when we got dark, the mothers were around, just picture a 2-bedroom house with 8 families, sleeping, the kids on the floor. But we had a candle that we can color and play games with. And then maybe the 3rd or 4th day, my dad, we couldn't figure out what they were doing in a minute. And they took a chain like the Cowboys, John Wayne, they put a cast iron pot, and there'd be a tripod. And right before dark, I'm looking at the light tonight right here. I can remember he took that candle away from us, and he said, remember. It kind of like a priest in church, or any church. And he took that candle and he says, remember, a candle makes the light. We don't need electricity. Then he took that same candle and walked down the steps, and he said, remember, that candle can make a fire. We don't need no gas. And then he took a bottle of water and he showed it to us. He said, we can't live without water. And I remember my dad got deputized with Sheriff Kravitz, and he said, you need to start hauling water to your people. All 3 years, working with Mr. Valance and bringing water line to Grand Isle from Jefferson Parish. I see Cindy Trish here working with the Fouche Parish, bringing water every way we can to provide the water. In 1959, when they brought the water line to Grand Isle, and put all that together, going through all the storms, losing the water line from the pipeline that I built in 2000 with Jefferson Parish, knowing that we lost it for Katrina. But for Ida, I got on the phone and 3 nights before the storm, I called Mr. Crosby and I said, I need 3 barges of water. This storm's gonna get powerful and we're gonna be out of water for a while. But all through the storms, I've been through 12 of them, and the oil spills, I never forgot what my dad told me. And I felt guilty, because all the times I did my homework, it was good. I say we, the council that I served before with, making sure that we had running water in some kind of way. But I'm honestly to tell you, this last storm put a toll on me, because I talked to Father Mike when he got there. I said, I have 3 barges of water in Market City. I talked to the mayor from Market City, and he said, David, just leave them there. In the meantime, I ran, when they closed the gate, making sure we had all my people, when we closed the floodgates with Wendell Puro and his team, and the Port Commission guys, we winded up in the hospital, and you see the film tonight, but it blew the roof off. So we was in the hospital. In the back of my mind, I'm wondering about the water situation, and Grand Isle was probably wiped off the map. The key thing today is, I couldn't handle it. I went to Father Mark. Then I talked about the line that they ran from Fouchon to Grand Isle. My dad built in 1959. Mr. Trish is here tonight. I called him up, working closely with Archie, the Lafont Parish. Whatever you need, we're gonna make this happen. So I'm proud to tell you about this young man bringing that water line, that little 8-inch line that we left in the ground. It brought water to Virginia, we barging water, and we're proud to tell you that it made us get water more quickly, which took about 77 days. But we hauled water, so that's one of the biggest things in my life that I never thought that I would leave. Thinking about my dad, don't forget, son. And I prayed a lot, and the barges came in, and we did it. So that's one of the lessons I learned.
You know what lesson I learned, and putting the place back together, we can talk about for days, right? It was watching our community rally around itself. Watching those 4 nurses who were in Lady of the Sea who handbagged those patients for 6 hours until the Coast Guard could medevac them out. You know, watching our water district guys wake up every morning and turn valves to try to get water back to our communities. Watching our volunteer firemen draft water from Lafont into St. Anne Hospital to keep the cooling system warm so we can keep the patients who were in there running. You know, watching the nurses and the staff at Thibodeau Regional work those patients who were coming from other nursing homes, other hospitals, as the only regional hospital we had left. You know, watching all that come together in the aftermath of the most powerful storm, right? Think back to Katrina, Rita, Gustav, and Ike, Isadora, Lily, all the fun things that David lived through, right? I was 6 when David got elected, I just realized that. I'm not saying you're old or anything, David, I'm just pointing out the fact. You know, think about all those storms that they jogged either west of us, right? We have never had a hurricane that put 200-mile-an-hour winds over Port Fouchon. We have never had a hurricane that had places like Cutoff and LaRose and Golden Meadow in a constant wind state, right? The eye wall never hit these communities. So when we talk about nobody died, nobody flooded really, you know, we had a few issues in North Lafont, we had a few homes taken on water. You know, the folks in Bayou Buff that first night calling, screaming, we got water coming. I'm like, there's no way. But we had a 9-foot storm surge in Bayou Buff, right? Z, you ever thought we'd have seen that Bayou Buff? No, right? But we did. But seeing the way the community rallied around itself and getting things back up and running so quickly, seeing Chet and his team at the port going, you know, in the face of other ports calling and saying, hey, you guys are done. You know, you guys come to Pascagoula, come to Port Aransas. And for Chet and his team to say, hold my beer, and in 9 days have our oil and gas industry back up and running. You know, and I know Councilman Chessel's here working with the council to put together the things that we had to put together very quickly to keep our community intact. To have housing for our communities, so people didn't run off to Gonzales or Prairieville and all those one places that had power and water, to stay here, to get our schools back up and running so quickly, to keep our community and the people from retreating was huge.
We learned that everything is vulnerable, not just talking about land or homes or businesses or even lives, talking about things like history and culture, the very basis of our society. And thank goodness Archie was cognizant enough between watching all the communities rally together and between his cursing episodes on radio. I was listening. He was thereby had the cognizance to come to Golden Meadow to visit the historical center and help rescue the historical artifacts from that building that no longer stands. Remember that? Yeah. So we're talking about thousands of artifacts, a grassroots museum that folks in town organized and assembled, thousands of annotated photographs and documents of a history that we may never see again. After the hurricane, it was all dispersed. Some of it was damaged, some of it went back to members of the community. Luckily, some of it came to Nicholls. But that museum, that stopping point for tours, no longer exists, and reminds us that that part of our being is also at risk. And one more thing, you think about how the major culture arrived in Lafourche Parish. Talking about Acadians that were sent from France to Nova Scotia, the British demanded the land, sent them away. The people that settled in Lafourche Parish largely went off to France for 30 years to resettle. They got sent away, came to Louisiana, or settled in Bayou Lafourche. Between 1785 and 1850, they left their lands being forced away by sugarcane plantations and other economic forces, made their way all the way to the coast, and now the coast is going away. So of all the insidious enemies that John Snell mentioned, coastal land loss is probably the worst.
In recent years, we've seen an increase in out-migration from our coastal parishes. How do we overcome that?
I think it's a combination of things. I had a very conversation with some folks from the Tim Port Lafourche Parish, some small business owners a couple of months ago. They go, Archie, how do we save the place? And the answer is, I don't know, right? It's a combination of things. It's a combination of figuring out how to make not only homeowners insurance, but flood insurance affordable. It's a combination of bringing interest rates down, bringing inflation down, and construction costs down. And it's a combination of saving our coast. We have to do all that we can to protect the assets that we have. Since 1983, we've taxed ourselves in Lafourche Parish to build the hurricane protection system that we now have. Standing on the top of, I'll say, Wendell's levee system now, kind of Nick's levee system as he takes over for Wendell with the South Lafourche system, and you're 18 foot above sea level, and you're looking out, and the center line of the back road, Highway 3235, is at a 0. You're at a plus 18, and the water on the outside is at a plus 6. That's a scary concept for a lot of people. So beefing up that protection, showing the communities that we can protect them, showing our businesses that we can protect them, that we can protect your employees if you want to locate here. We have to figure out how to continue to do that and how to create a place that Lafourche Parish wants to be the parish that people want to live, work, and play in. Without bringing those businesses, without bringing those people here, we're going to continue to see that outward migration. We're going to continue to see the 600 new lots that are being developed in Thibodaux and not in Golden Meadow. And it's a combination of all those factors, and I don't have the right answers. I probably never will, but I think working with the partnerships that we have with Nicholls State University, the New Coastal Center, with Balanced Media, with the Blue Carbon Initiative, and how do we privatize and hopefully induce private investment into coastal restoration, so it's not on the backs of the taxpayers, it's not on the backs of CPRA and Chairman Klein. It's going to take thinking outside the box in a lot of cases to be able to put the place back together, but make it sustainable in the future.
Well, by 2031, a major source of funding for coastal restoration will be gone. And that's all the money that came out of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. The Restore Act, Natural Resources Damage Assessment, NIFWIP, gone. Terrebonne Parish and probably Lafourche has benefited very much from that money, some of it in our own account, but most of it coming from the state. That money's going to be gone. We rebuilt our barrier islands with that money. We're not going to have it anymore. Those barrier islands, they look great right now. The storm didn't affect them that much, but that's our first line of defense. And they do a good job, and I go out there frequently to kind of document the situation. They've been greatly improved since about 2018. Been rebuilt. The rocks on Raccoon Island are doing very well in rebuilding that island, and that's a constant thing. If you look on the western coast of Italy, you'll see segmented rock barriers. Uganda and Grand Isle, they do work. It's been a battle for us with CPRA to get that included in those projects, but that's another battle. When that source of money dries up, we're left with two things. One, the QIPRA, Coastal Wetlands Planning Protection Restoration Act, which is about $50 million to Louisiana annually. A typical 200, 300 acre marsh creation project over 20 years costs 20, 25, $30 million. So $50 million, when you spread it over 20 coastal parishes, doesn't go too far, and it's very competitive. So we have to constantly be in front of people and work with federal sponsors to get these projects approved through with the technical committees and the task force to get the initial funds to make it go. And you're looking at a 5 to 8 year project before construction even begins, assuming the money is there. The other source of funds is GOMESA, the Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act, which those funds are derived from the offshore oil leases. The more leases, the more money. If we get Congress to pass the bill to reduce the cap on that, there'll be more money for Louisiana. Part of that, you're getting monies for coastal restoration. There's been a lot of effort put into offshore wind. Well, we need a structure in Louisiana so that we can capitalize on those leases offshore so that we can use that money for coastal restoration. We're working on that. It's being worked on in Washington by our delegation. But I'm a little fearful when we lose that source of funding from the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, because we're down to 2 at that point, and it means thinking out of the box. We have to get some other source of funds and maybe private sector investment. Terrebonne has taxed itself. We can't do that anymore to build Morganza and all the floodgates and all of that. So we're pretty much tapped out, but it's been effective. It has kept the water out of our houses since it's been built. But the thing is, it's a constant process. You build a levee and a reach sinks. You got to put more dirt on top of it. I made a joke the other day that in 15, 20 years, Terrebonne Parish will be a levee protecting a giant pond. That's how big borrow pits we have in the parish right now. So that's another issue. Yeah, I worry about that. I think CPRA does too, because it's been a major source of funds for coastal restoration in Louisiana. And yeah, we're gonna lose it at some point.
We got $122 million that we lobbied for to come in and met with President Biden when he came to Guyana. Bart, you remember that? I think anyway, it's just, for many years, working in, he put me on the levee board, Senator Houma, way back in 1992. And we created a levee board in Grand Isle, because West Jefferson Parish was collecting all the taxes. And we felt, we weren't getting the money to build some levees. So when you look at a little levee board, we 3 board members, and Wayne Eshton and Bobby Stanton was on the first board with me. I remember going to Washington and we worked with Wendell and way back with Mr. Terry, and they brought us up there. So all these years that I've been going to Washington, it's being honest with you, I just finished today the rocks that you see tonight on the Camardelle side, protecting the Camardelle Pass. Proud to tell you today, we planted our last pile, the drag lines will be moving. It took us 4 weeks to put Blue Levee Board, put this together, put it out to bid, and we got it done. So my experience today is I'm dealing with the Corps, and they got $122 million. I met with them last Monday in New Orleans, and we sat with them. I've been through 7, maybe 9 general colonels, and every one of them's different. But the team behind them is never different. And I just can't accept that 122 million, they're gonna start in June and July when my tourists are coming down today. Grand Isle's gonna be packed this weekend. They're gonna come work on my beach, probably around Ridgeside in that area, where everybody likes to park and go to the beach. In the meantime, I got golf courses that want to go to the beach. So, dealing with that, they're gonna come start in the summertime, 2 years. 2 years it takes the federal government to come. So I looked at the colonel and I said, okay? You're gonna take 122 million. You're probably gonna take 70, $80 million to come start on the Camardelle side, right behind the bridge side. And then now you're telling me you wanna come re-nourish the rocks from the state park coming toward the west. They're working. They're healing. And the 5 that I just put, I had lost 5 drownings at that time, that last summer, 2-3 years ago. Today you see that tonight, off of Bridgeside Marina, it's all built up. So you work with Mother Nature, you don't fight with Mother Nature. So before I left the Colonel, and I know he's gonna watch me on Channel 10, but it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, what's gonna happen, you're gonna be studying with these storms, the one that's getting ready right about a harvest, solar tropical storm. So I figured you're gonna have $55 million left. And right now, tomorrow, they will be flying a drone studying our beach. Okay? Tuesday, they'll probably be coming in. So as soon as a hurricane or a tropical storm gets to the Caribbean, Grand Isle, Fouchon, Lafourche Parish, all along the coast, it's changing the waves. So we gotta throw this study out. So remind me that 55 million in the next year or two, before they even start putting rocks, they wanna come in the end of 24 to start continuing the rocks. I said, all I need is 3 more million. You give me $58 million. I can put 37 more rocks. I can go focus on drainage. I can go focus on my people with their need on the backside of the island, the residents that live there. So it's just a waste of time. You send that federal money to the state, or you can tell you, all of us, we can deal with our elected officials, our representatives and senators. They know what we need. But by playing with the federal government, I'm being honest with you, all our representatives, congressmen, the money's there. Gary Graves, Troy Paul is a friend of mine, Cassidy Kennedy, Steve Scalise represents us. We met with them several times, and they understand the frustration. But something's wrong with the federal government. You know, we don't have time to study. I'm a rock man, always be a rock man. I mean, sand, if they put 3 packs of sugar, take a glass of water, it's gone. And you know, Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder can see it. And I'm just tired of it. I've been doing this so long that every 6 months I gotta go knock on the senator's door and the congressman saying, hey, we're washing away, we need some more help. So you see where the rocks work. This is one of the things that I think, and going back, when the oil spill hit, I still say that if I'd had some more rocks, then we'd have closed the passes like we wanted to do. You know, I always predicted there'd be 8 inches of oil on Burger Street, and today I predict if I don't put the rocks in front of Grand Isle, there's gonna be 12 feet of water on Burger Street to protect. Because I hunt between Grand Isle and Lafont, I have 2,500 acres, right where y'all want to build a levee coming across, right there at Hackberry Bay. And we went 5 weeks after the storm, and the flotons that we talked about earlier, they would look like a drag line, took it up and just took it out of the duck bodies. So in between Grand Isle and Lafont and going toward New Orleans, there's nothing left. But today I'm proud to tell you I got a call right before walking here. We applied for a grant, I'm sure you applied. Grand Isle, we're trying to save Little Turn Island, where they call the crack of a ball right there in Cheniere. I'm trying to tell you that you got oyster fishermen there, we got tern birds. Grand Isle was selected, and my dream is to put little rocks in that area. If you don't, you got 45 feet of water between there. That'll change the whole north side of Grand Isle for erosion. So God's good, and like I said, if they can send that money to the state, we can pump the government, we can get more done for all over Louisiana. And that's what it needs to be done, because our senator and congressman is putting it in the court's budget, and it's just study, study, study. You don't need to study. Like my grandpa said, if you can't figure from the west, you start from the east. It's working. You don't need to survey. Just go, and it's gonna work.
Thank you. Last question. Do you believe the coast can be saved? What does saved coast look like?
I was challenged about 5 weeks ago. You know, we got a basketball team and a baseball team. I got one of the finest gyms in America. David did it, working with Obama, President Obama, working with the right team at the time. I got one of the finest gyms in America. We got basketball, and we only got baseball. And I belong to Jefferson Parish, which they're great to me. But the bottom line is, when I had a choice with the council, I had a great council work together. in several councils the years before. But the bottom line is, you know, I want a baseball field, and when they tell you that you got a storm that hit you, and you got till January the 8th to the 16th, if you don't start building a baseball field, your school's gonna get punished, punishment, school, but the laws they have through the Association of Sports, whatever, that, you know, what's gonna happen is you're punished for 5 years. So between the council and myself, we're squirming every way we can. Thank God y'all came for the beach bash we have, Therese, to put our park together. So I didn't expect the school board to come, and I was waiting for good news. And I asked him, I said, so what can we do for you? I said, well, we need some baseball. You know, we need the baseball bats, we need the dugouts, we need a few bases, just to show that we're doing progress. And you know, you collect millions of dollars off of us, at the millage that you collect and the sales tax you collect. You know, we got a beautiful little school here, we got 164 kids. He said, well, Mr. Camardelle, right now you have about 84, and it's costing us quite a few $1,000s for each kid. And it just hit me. I said, well, look, there's no price tag on the kid. I parent the child, leaving LSU, got killed, they're all gonna be killed. So you're not gonna put a price tag on the kid. I can handle 12 disasters. I can handle all spirit. But I'd be damned if you're gonna close my school, and it ain't gonna happen. I might as well give you the keys to the post office. And he said, no, well, we're gonna look at it. And that's one of the things that I didn't need at the time, but none of us needed. I had 149 FEMA trailers, and all you can tell you, remember the president, I told the president when it was 143 of them in Alexandria, Louisiana. And I told him that we didn't want it right away. We wanted to give it to Nick that needed it, and Lake Charles. We're Cajuns, that's what we do. So there's always something that's a surprise to you. And the reason why I'm telling you this, you need to hear this, is just that you keep strong, you keep your families where they need to be, and you make sure that we save our coastline. As long as there's one greater stand to plant the American flag on Long Island, we're not going to school, and we're not going anywhere, and I can promise you, we're not going to close our school in Grand Island. I can promise you. I'm sorry for being emotional, but we're coming back.
It won't look like it looked in 1932. We don't have enough money for that. But I think we can sort of hold the line with what we have right now. I mean, talking from Terrebonne Parish, with our the most vulnerable parts of our coast right now are our barrier islands and those saline marshes outside of Morganza. Everything inside Morganza is doing pretty good because Morganza is a leaky system. It's actually creating some marsh on the inside or preventing saltwater intrusion. But those marshes that are between the barrier islands and Morganza, that's a critical component because they sort of tend to protect Morganza. And that we've had some success with through QIPRA in restoring some of that marsh. There's a long way to go. Eastern Terrebonne is a major problem area because there's so much open water there. And the 2023 master plan for the coast has a land bridge there, and we've been pushing that for a very long time. Now, what that land bridge is going to look like, ultimately, don't know, but at least it's in the plan. So we're optimistic that something's going to get done to protect that side of the parish. But it's a battle that will never end.
I think it's going to take, you know, the traditional levees and how we save our communities, and I see Lenore, keep looking at Lenore up at the top. You know, we had the Reggie Vagala floodgate for Hurricane Ida, right? We halfway did it with the barge for Hurricane Delta and Hurricane Zeta. But those were the first times, I think, in recorded history that people of Planche didn't have water in their yards, which was a huge leap forward for us when we talk about coastal restoration, hurricane protection. But it's going to take the structural components, right? It's going to take the levees, it's going to take the floodgates. It's going to take the non-structural stuff, right? It's going to take us lifting people's houses and rebuilding people's houses through FEMA grants. Hopefully, God forbid, they can afford the flood insurance on the back end. You know, it's going to take the traditional pump and dump methods of sediment capturing out of bodies of water and dumping that up against our levee systems and planting it with grass. It's going to take the partnerships with ConocoPhillips and Ducks Unlimited and Nicholls to help rebuild the terracing structure we have that not only provide waterfowl habitat for our hunters, which is a cultural aspect, but also trap sediment behind it and begin to create new land. It's going to take freshwater diversions, and I know this is where me and the mayor kind of go sideways a little bit, but it's all in how you operate it, right? It's going to take putting more freshwater into those systems to the point where we don't harm our fishermen, right? We don't harm that cultural aspect. We can still provide the seafood to the nation and the world, but when we have enough fresh water in the system, we better grow grass and keep things fresh so it doesn't continue to erode away and subside. Put all that stuff in a magnolite pot and put it on the stove for a couple hours. I think we can starve off to Mark's point what coastal erosion to most of us look like. Do we ever get back to what it looked like when Leeville had cotton fields? Absolutely not. But you know what? I don't know if Leeville needs a cotton field anymore. You know, we need pretty good fishing down there where the cotton field once was. But I think we need some level of protection and some level of a barrier so we stop things like we saw with Hurricane Ida and the 9-foot storm surge in Blythe.
Thank you, President Chasson. And before I turn it over to John, gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Dr. Ducey.
So I agree with Archie, it's never going to look the same. We can watch the satellite images of weather on TV in the evenings, and we see these incredible geometrical structures on landforms where no geometrical structure should exist, right? You can see Clovelly, you can see the solid fusion levee system. I think we're going to see more of that. But the question is not really what it visually looks like. The question is it going to be functional for people? Is it going to have economic opportunity? Is it going to keep people or attract people to new businesses? The vision of the coastal center at Nicholls is a working, living, resilient coast. So as long as people can live and work, as long as organisms can live and thrive and help us produce an economy, and as long as we're resilient against future threats, hurricanes and subsidence and saltwater incursion, I think that's what the new coast is going to look like.